the opportunity for providing like equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might not, might not be included in that in a typical environment.
I think I agree with what Maddie said. And I think when we think about it, like it's inclusion for children, but also inclusion for families too. It's so much about the families feeling comfortable that their kid is going to be supported and joining in the school community, whatever that might look like for them.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what everyone said. I think it's creating a space and an education where all children are fully included and it's the least restrictive. And they can learn alongside their peers, despite what despite their abilities or disabilities or yeah.
Yeah, we actually, with our community partners, were able to, and also with some of the information from DEC and NAEYC's joint statement, we were able to add this to our, what does high quality inclusion mean? So it means including those children with disabilities and programs that they can participate if they did not have a disability. And this being that there's access to a high quality program nearby them, which oftentimes it is not something that everyone has access to. Especially our rural communities, close by, high quality environment, maybe miles and miles away. In comparison to our urban communities where you may have 3 or 4 different selections of programs and they may not all meet high quality needs for a child that has special education services or an IFSP. We also want to acknowledge that the learning environments help support the child's development, and that looks different for every child. This includes for children with and without disabilities. We want to help promote the participation for them to learn and socialize with one another, because we see that with some of the resources and information that's in the toolbox, you get to hear from some researchers that mention the value of what high quality inclusion does for young children. That not only are they building friendships, but it also provides children without disabilities to be empathetic, to problem solve together, be teammates, and be long-lasting friends as well. There's also culturally and linguistic responsiveness. We want to provide a sense of belonging. We want to work alongside those peers that don't have a disability or are without a disability. We want to value those family members, like Jessica, Jasmine, and Maddie, you all mentioned, that in order for children to feel supported, their family needs to also feel the same. And I think that's one thing that families mainly look for when they're looking for a preschool program that is inclusive, is, are they going to feel like they belong? Are they going to feel supported? Or are they going to feel like everyone's giving them a cold shoulder and they have no one to lean on when they need support, especially when they're going through this huge transition of trying to let go of their child. It's already hard to let go of your 3 and 4-year-old to go into a classroom. can't even imagine having to let go of your child if they have a developmental delay or they need services. And they may not feel too comfortable if there's not enough confidence in having to do it. And that's what we want to provide. We want to provide confidence to those families and advocate for their children when it's needed. We also want to make sure that the providers are successful. This includes us working all together in this work. I would like to.
And I'll chime in. And since we have such a small group today, I was going to contribute on that Menti board as well, but my word was going to be belonging. So I'm glad that you covered that little piece, Cindy, because that's one of my favorite kind of things to talk about when we get into talking about those kind of basic components of inclusion, is that sense of belonging. And whether you're an adult or a small child, that if you feel like you belong, that's that basis of feeling included. And if you feel like you belong, then you feel safe. And if you feel safe, you can learn or contribute, or really, again, just feel like you're included. And so kind of just goes back to that feeling that's at the core that contributes to your overall experience and success.
Thank you, Chad. I really appreciate your input and providing that safe learning environment. That's the one thing that I think throughout if you have taken child development, I don't know if everyone has, because everyone goes through different career paths. But if we want to support that child development, and one of those basic needs is being safe and secure. If you are interested and would like to see what else was added about what does it mean for everyone, I've added the links to our Oregon guide in English and in Spanish. It is at the bottom at page 5, which is where I got this graphic from. And it also has a source as to where it came from, which was from the Department of Health and Human Services. So we want to identify the root causes as to why inclusion is not occurring. There can be many reasons. I want to give you all the space to write those down for maybe what may be happening in your community. We're going to try this again. Let's see if the Mentimeter wants to work now. Hope it does. But if it doesn't, you can also write it on the chat or come off mute. Oh, that works. Yay, it works. Put the menti.com in case you have some issues with the QR code. Lack of support with upper management and programs. And you can write multiple times. I think I put multiple responses because they're made by. You may have more than one reason for why there's a barrier for inclusion in settings. Awareness of benefits to all children. Staffing. Yes. Big, huge issue right now is trying to find people that want to be in early childhood and stick around. Ratio of peers.
And I feel that training, that staffing and those training pieces that were both put in really just very much go hand in hand, because obviously, staffing is important and challenging and a challenge, and training can be, a barrier for all staff. But there's that overlap where you can have a really tight knit group and a really well trained group, and if there's turnover or changes, then you have inconsistencies in those groups or those teams that may have at one point had a really solid understanding of inclusive practices.
And sometimes families' mindset also does impact like the other families that are coming in to the classroom. I know I have this conversation with my sister where she thinks that it will cause a barrier to the other children inside of the classroom if their child that does not have a disability is receiving services within. And I've had to advocate and move her mindset and tell her it is important for children with disabilities to also feel included. There's a lot of benefits and a lot of research that shows that children benefit from having a child that has a disability. I wish I had someone with a disability in my classroom when I was younger, because I think I would have been more empathetic and less scared to have these conversations than now as an adult having to be someone who's advocating for this work. Also, we're seeing a high rise in children with autism, and there's also that speculation that they're going to be needing more attention and needing more support, and that's taking away the support and attention from their own child, which oftentimes doesn't happen. And it also is a great time for us to let parents know that they are a key tool to all this work. All of this tends to work together if families also participate within this work. That includes even if their child doesn't have a disability. We do need more trainings in different languages, and we are seeing that a lot, especially with resources. You have no idea how hard it has been to find resources in Spanish or in any other language. And that includes professional development for individuals that are interested in this work, that aren't able to receive any of this professional development in their home language, or actually have the funds to provide interpretation or to be able to translate the material, because material is fairly expensive to get translated. Hopefully that will change soon. There is also a need for more services and time for the EIs, especially right now that we are seeing a decrease in funding. And mental health, trauma-informed safety behavior trainings and services are also needed. Yes, they are. And we're hoping that we see more of that increase with mental health, as we are seeing DELC make movements with OROMHA, the Oregon Mental Health for Infants and Toddlers. If you want to learn more on that, there's more information on it on the DELC website. Especially for, I think, those communities that are currently have accepted the grant and are basing those services within either their CCR&R or the Early Learning Hub or ESD programs. So I'm going to move us forward to the next thing, and this is from your material from the Preschool Inclusion Toolbox. These are the challenges that they've seen have been reported within different organizations and programs nationwide. Attitudes and beliefs. Those are the attitudes and beliefs from not just our staff, but also from family and community members. Fiscal and contracting, that money. The blending and braiding of funds, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's illegal, what's legal for us to do. Also approval from non-public school settings. Sometimes I know in California, our school settings, the school district is in charge of our children with IFSPs and IEPs. So sometimes they don't want to let go of those children because they want to keep those children within their public schools. But that's very different here in Oregon, which I have learned that we use Part B of the IDEA. So ESDs have more approval as to where those school settings will be occurring, and if that's even available for embedded practices or services within local communities or local programs. Our curriculum or methods, transportation is another one that is a huge challenge for a lot of communities, especially our rural communities, getting children to and from their service provider that's nearby, or even there's some services that require your child to leave the program for a few hours, then transport them to the location where they're going to get their embedded services, and then traveling back to the provider so that they can continue having their embedded services there. Personnel qualifications. There's always a challenge that the qualifications for special educations are far higher. There's also conflicts with policies, and then also conflicts with the program quality. And this all looks different in every state and in every program, and it's not all the same. So I kind of want to move us to having a mindset of why inclusion is very important, not only to a child, but also to the parents that are receiving this support while their child is attending a school that's in their community nearby. If you guys can give me a yes or a no, a thumbs up, and a reaction. If you had the opportunity to read the little story from page 27 and 29 of the Inclusion Toolbox. I see one yes. If you did not, it's okay. I know we're all busy. Getting a book sometimes is hard. I know I've been reading a book. Yeah, Maddie, I know. It's okay. And then especially if you just barely got the book. If you do have any time and you want to read, it's only a brief short essay. It is on page 27 and 29 of your Preschool Inclusion Toolbox. In the purpose of time, I'm going to go ahead and just give you a brief overview of the story. So this is a story that tells you a parent's perspective about their young adult who has a disability. The parent has been struggling as to where their child will receive services in an atypical classroom. The parent shares a little bit of their successes and challenges that they need to overcome in order for them to advocate for their child to be embedded in an inclusion classroom. They have a lot of battles, especially as the child gets older. They start to see that there's a lot more battles and hurdles that they need to go through. It highlights the story as to what's valued and appreciated of school administration and teachers. I think throughout the story, you get to see the appreciation of the parent when they see that the teachers took the time and the effort to not only learn tools and strategies to help support the child in their classroom, but also help support those friendships that the child was receiving with their peers. And you also get to see that dedication that a lot of the school administrators and teachers put into their work to help incorporate all children so that they feel like they belong. And that also includes for the families. And then that at the very end, we get to see that this is a lifelong success. The child's life is prosperous. They get to work, be out there and be a part of our society. And then the family's life was far better. They got to see their child successfully complete high school and find employment. Their child, Dan, which is the child that you'll hear about throughout the story, is not only having long-lasting relationships with his peers while he's inside of school, but still continues having them throughout his school years, even during middle school and high school, and even after graduation. And how proud they were to actually be able to see their child successfully complete high school and join the workforce. How many stories can you guys think about where you can hear all these successes? I know I have one. My favorite story to tell is I was a home-based educator. I had a child when I started. He was 2, and he was diagnosed with autism. And at 3, he has to graduate, what we consider graduate, which is go over into a preschool classroom. And throughout that time, he never talked. And I had his younger sibling because his mom got pregnant again. She had another baby, so I got to stay a little bit longer with them. And I got to hear his first words. And other than just singing ABCs over and over and over again, I also got to see the embedded work that the mom was doing inside of the classroom, the support she was receiving with the service providers, the educational services would come to their home. And then even when they were at school, they would also come, and also his brother was learning all of the materials and stuff to communicate with his brother because he wanted to play with him and they wanted to have a bond. And the mom was very worried about her child that was older harming the baby, but he was so gentle. And to this day, I still follow them on social media. She has another little girl. She's cute, super adorable. And I get to see him still continue to progress throughout his childhood. I believe now he should be in the 3rd grade. And every time I see them, I'm always so happy to see all of the progress that they've made. And even for her, her and her husband have both increased in their career. They're still able to follow through with their own life goals, including having to move and own a home. And these are all successes just from one moment. I mean, I still have more stories to tell. I should probably also write a book about the experiences I've had and all of the hard work these families put into not only for their family's well-being, but also for their child's well-being. I'm gonna move us to why this is important for us to see this lifelong experience and inclusion. And the reason for that is apart from the DEC and the NAEYC joint statement. If you have also not read that, it is also in your book for the inclusion toolbox. It's on page 21 through 25. This is a graphic of what it pretty much entails throughout the joint statement. As you can see in the center, the child is in the middle. We want to be able to mold ourselves around the child, not have the child mold into the system. And this requires us to do a lot of movements around like providing access, getting that family involved, getting their specialized individualized support within the classroom, doing ongoing evaluation, professional development, not just for the ESD or EIECSC providers, but also for the teacher and provider that are working alongside that child within their classroom. That involves participation and collaboration with one another, and then providing support, being able to help support universally using tools that not only benefit that one child, but can benefit all children in the classroom, such as those schedules and routines, visual communication, being able to problem solve together, conflict resolution. Those are all things that help support not just that one child, but help support other children in the classroom. And it kind of goes a little bit more into what does that contribute? What are the information that we've heard from previous research? If you do have time to read those sections, you're more than welcome. This has also been translated in Spanish, which if you want to share as a awareness and let families and providers know as to why it's important to have high quality inclusion and what the DEC and AEYC has to say about it, you can share that information as well. I think I have that stored somewhere in Spanish. So if needed, I can share that to you all so you can use it for your awareness in your program. So we're going to get into the why. So this is more of just a reflection I was going to have you all do within your communities to decide what community means to you. Who are the beneficiaries? What issues are you seeing? And then what data is currently available or need to be collected in order for you to determine the focus. I'm keeping track of myself with time, and I want to be sure we get to the action goal parts. So if any of you want to unmute and just define what community may mean to you, or write it on the chat, that also works as well. And then who benefits from your community? Not all at once, you guys. I mean, whoa, all the comments. I guess I can go ahead and kind of let you know a little bit about what community for me is. I am new to Oregon. I have been here only for about 5 years. It has been particularly rewarding to be in this community. I have felt very welcomed, coming from an environment where it is go, 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 because I come from Los Angeles and everybody's just in a hurry. They're all grumpy for some reason, and it might have to do with traffic. But when I moved here, I felt more and more like I am able to feel welcomed. The children around in our community, especially when I started working here for Marion Polk County, was benefiting a lot of the work, especially during COVID, when we had to do a lot of the closures. I felt more like we were all working together to help thrive and move forward through this very traumatic experience. Especially as we were helping like our first responders. I did the first responders for childcare, while some of the hospitals, fire department, the police station, our grocery stores, pharmacies, they were all open. They needed childcare and we provided that. There's also still some issues when it comes to our community and sometimes that disconnect that we may not get, being close by to one another. We're seeing a little bit more of a disconnect with our community. especially when it comes to topics about what would benefit our community, what will help progress it. And we do have data on that. So I'm gonna move us forward into our leadership team. So to kind of get us working into what we're gonna look over for the inclusion indicators, I want to just show you all how our leadership team is created. We have a state leadership team. And I hope that within your community, you have a community team that you've already organized and developed together. If you have not, or if you're still in deciding who needs to join, why they need to join, and how you would advocate that, you can also we'll look over the inclusion indicators on leadership, and it'll help guide you to who you may want to invite in. We have program coaches, practitioner coaches, and classrooms, and this is all embedded work that works together from the bottom to the top, from the top to the bottom. We all work together to help each other build our community's capacity. That includes either professional development, providing support to one another, being able to find resources, or even being able to say, hey, I need help. I don't know how I can help this family, and just having to throw a lifeline out there to not just to people around you, but also to our state leaders, because if you do have a barrier that may cause policies and procedures that we currently have here in our state that we will need to oversee, then this is where some of this work will help. Us notify those state leaders what's going on within your community and how we can help surpass those barriers. I want to go over a little bit of the community leadership teams and what it means for the inclusion indicators. We want to create an advocacy for engagement. We want to give everybody a seat at the table, those who are needing to be there. The inclusion indicators sort of go over a little bit of your recruitment on what programs and local implementation teams would best benefit to start this inclusion work. It also helps you plan your professional development, and that includes either trainings that may be needed, coaching that you may have or may not have or may have to look over, or what coaching practice you want to go ahead and use when you're using the inclusion indicators, and how you plan to monitor, evaluate, and progress and make data-making decisions. I was going to go over and let you all work on your community vision, but as we don't have all your members here, at the end of the training, when you meet monthly with your community inclusion teams, it is a great time at the start of the school year to look at your vision statements or purpose statements. I think I froze. Did my internet freeze?
Yeah, it did for just a second.
It's like you're
Okay.
back. You're back now.
Oh, cool. And it just told me it's unstable. I also do have my partner that works here, and he also has Zoom calls and Zoom meetings. So he may be stealing my bandwidth. But I was gonna go over the shared vision and mission, but because everyone in your team is not all here, I want to provide you all a space to talk about that when you get together within your monthly meetings. This is a great time in the school year to look over it and see what new shared visions you may all have, especially if you have new members that are joining or members that have left and you want to revisit it and revamp it and make it all your own within all your community's contributions. You can go over that during your monthly meetings. I'm going to go over the inclusion indicators and what those are. So on ECTA, if you have not visited the early childhood technical assistance. Yeah, technical assistance. Early Childhood Technical Assistance website, ECTA. They kind of go over as to what these implementation indicators are. This is just to help you build to performance and kind of create a checklist and an self-assessment and also an assessment that you can continuously use for your programs. This either be our state leaders are using the inclusion indicators to help promote high quality inclusion. Some of our community inclusion teams are also using the inclusion indicators to help support their communities, local programs, and even the environment is for our classrooms. These are kind of helpful guides for you to go over and kind of check off what is occurring or taking in place or is not taking in place, and where there may be areas of improvement, or maybe an area that you have not thought about and you may want to revisit. These are all written very broad. So it is up to your community, the state leaders view this differently, local programs view it differently, and it's meant to help various settings, not just conform to one, but to help specifically expand those challenges and barriers that some communities may have, including coaching, the early care environment, education environment, ECEE indicators are used for our classroom settings, and those are used for coaching tools, similar to what Teapot and Tippy Toes would be used for. However, they don't require reliability. So there's no reliability test that you need to take. But once it is implemented and plans are developed, it helps increase practices that allow high quality inclusion to occur within those programs. And I do have a crosswalk for the ECEE indicators and Teapot that go side by side together. We are going to have a program coach training at the end of this month. And that resource will be provided there to our program coaches so that they can see the difference, and then they could provide that resource to our practitioner coaches that are out there working with the teachers and developing an action plan. Here are the 11 indicators. They were recently reviewed and they are out of field test. We were, during COVID, a part of this field test. So a lot of our feedback that was given back from the 3 communities that were involved in this work, your words, comments, feedback was highly contributing to the new inclusion indicators. I am adding a link to the Excel spreadsheet for the community inclusion indicators. We'll use this to help sort of guide your teams to help score each section. I'm also going to add the local Excel spreadsheet. And this is just for you to use throughout this training or while you're doing your meetings. Eventually, if you have not done so and you need information on PIDS, the Pyramid Model Implementation Data System currently now has the community inclusion indicators on the PID system. And the system is currently being piloted here for the state of Oregon. If you're interested in wanting to be added or have yet to register for your community or for your program, you can also contact Tess Wood about getting an account added. I am also adding a link to our smart sheet for PIDs. If you require any system support, if you're interested on what the security measures are for PIDs, what that looks like, especially for adding your community inclusion indicators, that those don't require any student information. It'll just require your members to be added to PIDs. And then you can start adding and graphing the data that you're collecting in those spreadsheets. And then add those to PIDs, and it has a universal system. I highly encourage that you are adding your community inclusion indicators or your benchmarks of quality there, because the data that's being collected in the graphs that are pretty neat when you look at them afterwards, help contribute to us letting our legislators, our stakeholders, our state leadership team see all of this work that's being done and what progression has been done throughout the year. Also, it might help us and help you all with funding, because I know that is another area where these graphs help our programs with, is to be able to provide data and concrete evidence of the work that's being done, and then the funding that's being incorporated when these changes are being done for high quality inclusion.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see, whether it's community level, or program level, or classroom level. Once that data starts coming in, just to see, like Cindy said, some just those visuals, not graphs, and that represent just how quickly and how amazing some of those, increasing inclusive practices really help and demonstrate the success of that implementation. And like Cindy said, the goal is then you have visuals and data and then evidence of, that can go to support those efforts, and ultimately help support that funding that I know we all kind of have challenges with.
These are the 7 components of the high quality inclusion indicators. We want to provide that there is sufficient support and interactions within the peers with and without disabilities. It helps focus on specialized individualized support, family involvement, a very big key part, not just for the inclusion indicators, also for benchmarks of quality. It also helps a lot with our effective ongoing professional development, what areas some of our providers may need that are locally within our community, also within our programs, what sort of ongoing professional development they may need, maybe learning more on modifications and adaptations, knowing how to collaborate as a team with providers and the families and the ECSCs coming all together to one table to help provide input to the child's IFSP goals, instead of just letting the ECSC making those decisions and saying, these are the ideas you should do, here you go, here's the paper, and incorporate these in your classroom. Your classrooms very well as to how it flows and what works best for this child and what doesn't work best for this child, and those ideas are very valuable, and so are the parents' ideas. And ongoing professional development helps you on that. Ongoing program evaluation is also very important. We want to have data making decisions and make those decisions based on evidence that we see instead of what we assume. Here are some key assumptions about teaching and learning. Children and families are autonomous and unique. Their culturally and social experiences drive how children learn and develop. Providers must pay close attention to the biases they bring for their teaching and learning experiences. Authentic and affirming environments and experiences set the stage for children's learning. So we want to build capacity for effective teachers taking their time, energy, and resources. The inclusion indicators will help support that system that provides the time and space to develop teaching expertise. This teaching expertise is gained through an engaged process with opportunities to observe, practice, reflect, and try again. Capacity building is an individual process or shared group, which is clear, intentional, and non-evaluative. These tools are meant to help you all self-assess your community. It doesn't mean that your community is not following through with specific things. It's not punitive in any way. It's not meant to be an evaluative to help identify staff performance. This is useful work so that you are able to help build capacity, help provide expertise, both in training and in coaching over time. The successes of the provider is based on how effectively policies and process across the systems are implemented. When we are doing our self-assessment for the inclusion indicators, I want to help kind of guide us when we're making these decisions and going through the spreadsheet, is to come as a group consensus. What does that look like? What does that entail? Are you all doing hand voting, like 1 for it's not in place, 4 it's in place, we're all doing it, 0 that's not happening at all, there's an area we need to work. And then what happens if you have 50-50 where there's a divided, and how you're going to make that decision for that consensus score. You also want to consider how you're going to be monitoring and revising the inclusion indicators. Is this going to be done annually, quarterly, monthly? It's kind of extensive of an spreadsheet, and then inclusion indicators are very, very long. So I doubt it will be a monthly thing that you will revise. For sure, it'll either be every quarter or at least every year, and that is up to your community to decide. You also want to identify those key indicators that are relevant to your community. Every community is going to be different. You want to provide psychological safety where people feel that their voices are heard, accepted, comfortable to share those thoughts without any repercussion or fears of getting some backlash because they said something. We want to acknowledge that there may be possible racial equity issues and challenges in the area, where one may have responsibility and authority in those areas in which one may have influence, but not direct responsibility. And we also want to dream big. We want to have these big goals, but we want to encourage that we make small changes, because even throwing a small pebble into a pond makes very big ripples. And then after reviewing your group self-assessment, you want to be able to maybe select 1, 2, or 3 key indicators that will help you achieve these goals throughout the year. And again, you want to start small. If something is better than nothing. And at the end of it, you're going to have long-lasting outcomes. And that includes having big changes and increases in accessibility, participation, and support for all children. So we're going to dive into a little bit of data real quick before we're kind of getting to the end of our webinar series, or this training for this day. I kind of wanted to go over some of the state of preschool inclusion in the United States. So when we're thinking of inclusion, one key consideration is viewing the current state. Annually, the Department of Education reports the implementation of the IDEA. I gathered this image from the current 2022-23 school year. And we can see that services from Part B of IDEA are mandated by early intervention services. The maximum extent appropriate in settings that are considered natural environments, which would include infants or toddlers, home or community settings where there's typical. In 2021, there was 267,825 million, or 56.8% of the 471,000 children's ages from 3 to 5 who receive services under IDEA. You can see the percentage here where it says regular early child classroom. These are children that were receiving services at least 10 hours, or the majority of their time was spent within a regular classroom. These were either at least 10, they spent some time there at an early childhood program, but a majority of their time was spent elsewhere. So they were either sent to a special education classroom. At least 4.9% were in the regular classroom. They spent less percent of their time there in a regular classroom. Some of them went to separate classrooms. We can see that there's a huge, still 28%. There's also service provider locations and then other environments. This can either be at home, where they're receiving services. Home base is another area where some of the Head Start programs use home base to provide services to some families that are in rural communities, and they're still receiving those services, embedded services within the child's home. I sort of wanted to give us this collection of where our nation is, so that we can move into what our state is at. And this is where our state is at. We are currently have about 39% of children that are in a regular classroom. So we aren't that far off from our previous. So as you can see, they were at 36.1%. We are a little bit higher in our number of children that are receiving services. Small is big. So we pushed a little bit higher than the nation. We also see that there's separate classrooms. It's 18% here in comparison to the separate classrooms here is 28.6%. And then there's also home services and then services provided in the local community, whether this be with providers. I gathered this information from OSEP, from our Office of Special Education. You can also gather this information with your own community. I will share that information in a moment when we get to the planning. We only have 10 more minutes, so like I mentioned, we are going to let you all have this opportunity to plan, but as our group is very, very small, I don't think we'll have that much of an input and be able to provide clear consensus without having all of your members included in this work. You want to be able to provide their feedback and their input and perspectives when you're starting to set a goal. But I am going to leave you all to reflect on how you are planning to increase the number of children that are receiving services within your community. And so in your community teams, when you meet monthly, if you can look over the current rate of your IFSP, some of this information and data can be collected with the ESDs. They have this information. If not, the Oregon Department of Special Education also has this information public so that you can all see it for every school year. You can set a goal. Again, one of our communities that previously did this work that showed progression, they started with noticing their percentage throughout the years, that it was at a consistent 15-20%, and they wanted to go just a little bit over 10% to 30%, and they went over that to 50%. That is up to your community to decide. So thinking about where you are currently at with the services that is being incorporated. What is the capability for your community? Are you able to increase maybe 2%, 3%, 10%, 40%, 100%? You never know. Dream big. But hopefully it is able to allow you to plan what you would see in 3 years. I'm hoping that the next time that we meet, you all have a goal and set an increase for the next 3 years, what that percentage would look like for your community. Again, we don't have all members here, so I would really like for all of you to bring this back to your inclusion teams so that you can prepare and plan for the school year and how that may look like. Also, when we're looking at raising awareness and looking at these next steps, the toolbox provides you with a lot of great ways for you to spread awareness for this work. And this also includes spreading awareness to implementation sites or programs that may be interested in joining this work and want to start practicing inclusion within their programs. I am providing a whole bunch of links from Challenging Behaviors, from NAEYC, from the Parent Center Hub. They provide information in Part B, and those items are somewhat translated. ECTA also has some very good family engagement videos and how to support family leaders if you are going to start promoting awareness to parent leaders that may want to join in this work with you as a community inclusion team. There's also information from the Head Start office and other websites that can help support you in providing awareness and advocacy for this work. I also want to give everybody an opportunity as we are nearing our end of this webinar series to kind of share, reflect as you are leaving, how you might use these resources in your community inclusion team to promote awareness and recruitment for communities that or partners that may want to join you. I'll leave this for a moment. We are going to be nearing our end. Are there any questions or concerns at this moment? Thank you, Maddie. So I'm going to move us forward to the next slide, which is our evaluation. Like I said, we're nearing our end. We made it. It's an hour and a half. So proud of you guys for staying and sticking around and listening to me talk. I hope next time we will have more opportunities to have small group discussions. I really want to work around having to have all you guys talk to one another than for me to be the one constantly talking, because you all have extensive amounts of knowledge, more than I do, when it comes to your community. And so I just want to be able to give you all that space instead of just letting me give you a whole bunch of information. Our next meeting is on October. I have it right here. Where do I have it? It's always at the start of the month. We'll send you a reminder. If you have not had an opportunity to do the attendance, please do so that we can give you credit for attending the session. We do hope to see you all next time.
And next month is October 9th. Sorry, I was double muted,
Thank you, Chad.
but still a
October
Wednesday,
9th.
still 1 o'clock, October 9th.
Please share this information with your friends and your community inclusion teams if they are interested in joining as well and want to be a part of this conversation, especially for our next meeting on October 9th. Invite them. We're more than happy to welcome them here and provide you the space so that you can action plan. Next month, if you can all have the opportunity to read over chapters 2. Also, page 21 of the Oregon guide or the guide for implementation. There will be some materials that we'll talk about there. And then there's also, we'll review the community attitudes and beliefs for the indicators, and that's C3. So if you want to go over with your community and build a consensus score for those, please do so. Or look over them, and then you can, when we meet next time, you can go ahead and score them as you have open discussion. For your action planning with your program coach, if you have not done so, and this is the start of the school year, many of us have been assigned new roles. Some of us have left, been promoted, moved, whatever the reason. Reviewing your CIT roles and responsibility will help you all start and kick off your school year. Also, setting up your monthly meetings if you have not done so and you require some organization between multiple people to have an actual time and date that works best for all, finding a consecutive date that works for all of you. Also, having your agenda, meeting facilitator, timekeeper, notes, and mission and vision that you can always review every time that you meet. And also, I will leave you all with your action planning so that when you meet with your inclusion teams, you are able to plan for awareness on community inclusion. Are there any further questions as we are now at 2:30 and I want to let you all go? No? Well, you are all free to go. Enjoy your Wednesday. We will see you all next time. And I hope to hear from all of you in our next action planning and webinar series. Thank you so much for being here. Truly appreciate you all doing all this work with us. Keep in touch, and if not, we will keep in touch with you.
Thanks, everyone.